The year is 1900. The air tastes of Sultan Danis. You're on a small fishing boat, a kaiki, bobbing in the Aegean Sea. Your name is Elias Stadiades, and your trade is sponges. It's a dangerous, lung-busting job. Your equipment is rudimentary, almost comically so. A heavy bronze helmet, a canvas suit that leaks, and a single hand-pumped air hose connecting you to the world of the living. Every descent is a gamble. But the waters off the island of Simi are rich, and a good haul means you eat well for months. This year, however, the journey home for Easter is different. A violent storm, one of those sudden Mediterranean furies, has blown your vessel miles off course. It whips the sea into a gray, churning chaos, and for a terrifying 24 hours, you and the crew are simply passengers on a ship captained by the wind. When the storm finally breaks, you find yourselves adrift in an unfamiliar patch of blue, huddled near the rocky, uninhabited island of Antikythera. The captain, Dimitrios Kontos, a man whose face is a roadmap of sea wrinkles and sun squints, decides to wait for calmer winds. And since you're here anyway, he figures, you might as well see what's on the seabed. It's a bit of a wildcat venture. No one knows these waters. You draw the short straw, or maybe you volunteer. The historical record is a little fuzzy on that detail. Either way, you're the one going down. You pull on the heavy, clumsy suit. Your crewmates screw the bronze helmet onto its collar, the echoing clank of metal sealing you into a world of muffled sounds and your own breathing. Over the side you go, a clumsy splash, and then the slow, heavy descent begins. The world of sunlight and air fades to a shimmering ceiling above you. The water, clear at first, deepens to a hazy, mysterious blue. Down you go, pulled by the weights on your boots. The rhythmic thump of the air pumps the only connection to your friends above. You land on the seabed at a depth of about 45 meters, or 150 feet, a dangerous depth for the gear you're using. The landscape here is alien. Rocky outcrops and fields of waving seagrass. Your job is to find sponges, but your eyes are drawn to something else. It's a strange, almost surreal sight. A trail of things. You plod forward, your heavy boots kicking up soft clouds of silt. And then you see it. The decaying skeleton of a massive wooden ship, its ribs jutting out from the sand like the bones of a leviathan. But it's the cargo that makes your heart hammer against your ribs, a frantic rhythm that has nothing to do with the air pump. All around the wreck, scattered in the sand, are statues. Bronze statues of men and gods, their forms still elegant despite the marine life clinging to them. One statue in particular catches your eye. A life-sized figure of a young man, his arm outstretched. You've stumbled upon a graveyard of art, a sunken museum. You're just a sponge diver, but you know treasure when you see it. Forgetting the sponges, you manage to break off the arm of the statue proof. It's heavier than you expect. Your ascent is frantic. You tug on the signal rope, and the crew begins to haul you up, back toward the light. When your helmet breaks the surface and is unscrewed, you babble out your story, a breathless tale of a company of naked women and men on the seafloor. Some of your crewmates think the depth has made you delirious, a victim of nitrogen narcosis, the rapture of the deep. But then you show them the bronze arm, and everything changes. This is no longer a sponge diving trip. This is a salvage operation. You and your crew have just stumbled upon what will become one of the most significant underwater archaeological finds in history. Historians, even today, are still debating the ship's exact origin and intended destination. Was it sailing from Pergamon, heading to Rome, a treasure-laden vessel carrying the spoils of war, or a simple merchant ship loaded with luxury goods for a wealthy Roman villa? The answer, like the rest of the ship, is buried in the deep. For now, all you know is that beneath the waves lies a fortune, and among that fortune, a corroded, unassuming lump of bronze that no one will pay any mind to. Not yet. The news of your find spreads like wildfire through the small, tightly knit communities of the Greek islands. A bronze arm from the depths is a story too good to keep quiet. It doesn't take long for the tale to reach the ears of the authorities in Athens. This is no longer a private venture. The Greek government, proud of its newly independent heritage and fiercely protective of its classical past, quickly steps in. This isn't just treasure, it's a matter of national pride. Within weeks, your humble sponge diving operation is transformed. The Hellenic Navy dispatches a ship to support the salvage, and archaeologists from Athens arrive, their minds buzzing with the possibilities. You are now part of the world's first major state-sponsored underwater archaeological excavation. Not that you call it that. To you, it's still the same cold, dangerous work. But now with more important people watching. The operation lasts for nearly a year, from the tail end of 1900 into the summer of 1901. Every day that the weather allows, a diver goes down. The process is grueling and terrifyingly unsafe by modern standards. You and your fellow divers continue to use the same primitive helmets and hand-pumped air hoses. Decompression sickness or the bends is a constant, mysterious threat that no one fully understands. It's a grim lottery. During the excavation, one of your crew, a young man named Per-I-K-L is Delanas, will die from it. Two others will be left permanently paralyzed, their bodies twisted by the nitrogen bubbles expanding in their blood. This treasure claims its own price, but the lure of what lies beneath is too strong. On the deck of the Navy ship, a staggering collection of ancient art begins to accumulate. You haul up magnificent bronze statues. Their surfaces are brilliant green from centuries of patina, but their forms are as perfect as the day they were cast. There's the head of a Stoic philosopher, his face a mask of serene contemplation. There are marble figures, ghostly white and fragmented, their limbs scattered across the debris field. Delicate glassware, intricate pottery, and amphorae still sealed, their contents long since turned to see watery mush. Each piece is a miracle, a ghost from another time. The archaeologists on board are ecstatic, rushing to catalog and preserve every new discovery. Historians are still arguing about the collection's nature. Was it plunder being shipped to Rome after the sack of a Greek city? Or was it a curated order, a commission for a wealthy Roman seaside villa? The ancient equivalent of a high-end furniture delivery. The ship was, after all, a Roman vessel. It's amidst this parade of wonders that you find it. On one of your dives, wedged between the splintered remains of a wooden crate and a pile of roof tiles, you see a lump. It's not shiny. It's not beautiful. It's a rock-like concretion, a greenish-brown mass about the size of a large book. It's so heavily corroded and encrusted with marine life that it barely looks man-made. It looks more like a piece of the seabed that decided to grow into a boxy shape. You pry it loose. It's surprisingly heavy. There are no features to speak of. Just a lumpy, ugly surface. You send it up to the surface in a basket, probably along with other, more promising-looking artifacts. On the deck, it receives no fanfare. While the archaeologists are carefully cleaning the face of a bronze god, your lump is unceremoniously dumped with other bits of scrap. It's the ugly duckling of the treasure haul. Someone likely pokes it with a stick. It's clearly metal bronze, but it's a wreck within a wreck. It appears to be a single, solid piece of corroded junk. There are faint, almost imperceptible lines and circles on its surface, but they are mostly obscured by the crust. You can almost imagine one of the sailors asking if they should just toss it back into the sea to make room for another marble arm. But for whatever reason, it is saved. Perhaps because it was found amongst the treasure, it was given the benefit of the doubt. It's logged and crated up, not with the glorious statues, but likely with the other, unidentifiable metal fragments. In one of the salvage photographs from that time, you can see it sitting on the ship's deck, looking for all the world like a piece of fossilized bog. No one who saw it that day could have possibly guessed what it was. They saw a ruined piece of bronze. They had no idea they were looking at the single most complex piece of technology to have survived from the ancient world. They had found the Antikythera Mechanism, but for now, it was just a strange, green lump, and its secrets would remain locked inside its corroded shell, waiting for a different kind of curiosity, one that looked past the beauty of art and into the genius of engineering. The journey back to the mainland feels different. The weight on the ship is no longer just the crew and the diving equipment. It's the weight of history. You arrive at the port of Piraeus, the main harbor of Athens, not as a simple sponge diving crew, but as national heroes. The docks are buzzing. News has preceded you. Journalists are there, along with government officials in stiff collars and serious suits, and archaeologists whose eyes gleam with an excitement that borders on manic. This is a moment of profound national significance for Greece. To have these masterpieces of the Hellenistic age, lost for 2 millennia, returning home is a powerful symbol of the nation's glorious past. The unloading process is a carefully orchestrated piece of theater. First come the stars of the show, the A-list celebrities of the ancient world. The bronze statues are hoisted from the ship's hold with painstaking care, wrapped in damp cloths and secured with a web of ropes. As the crane swings them over the dock, a hush falls over the crowd, followed by a collective gasp, then applause. You watch as the youth of Antikythera, the life-sized boy you first saw in the deep, is settled onto a waiting cart. Even caked in grime and missing his arm, his form is breathtakingly elegant. The philosopher's head follows, his bronze face so full of character it feels like he might start blinking and scolding the noisy crowd for their frivolity. Each one gets its hero's welcome. They are destined for the grand halls of the National Archaeological Museum of Athens, where they will be cleaned, studied, and put on pedestals for the world to admire. Then comes the rest of the cargo, the B-list artifacts, crates of pottery, carefully packed marble fragments, the delicate glassware that somehow survived the shipwreck and the salvage. Each is treated with respect, labeled and prepared for transport. And then there's your green, lumpy friend. It comes up in a net, along with other miscellaneous metal bits and pieces of the ship's hull. It's unceremoniously dumped onto a wooden pallet dock. There is no gasp from the crowd, no applause. The officials barely give it a glance. An archaeologist, perhaps a junior one tasked with sorting the less glamorous finds, comes over. He kneels, prods it with a gloved finger. The concretion is thick, hiding whatever shape it once had. It looks like something that fell off the bottom of a much more interesting object. You can almost hear the internal monologue. What in Hades is this? Part of the ship's ballast. A chunk of melted together nails. You might notice a faint curve on one side, a straight edge on another. But it's so damaged, so utterly ruined, that making any sense of it is impossible. The historical records of this moment are, unsurprisingly, non-existent. No one thought to write down their first impression of the ugly lump. Historians still speculate about this critical moment. Was there one person, just one, who saw something more, who perhaps noticed a hint of a gear tooth through a crack in the crust and thought, "Hold on, let's not be too hasty"? Or was it simply a matter of bureaucratic procedure, a rule that said everything from the site, no matter how ugly, must be preserved? We'll likely never know. What we do know is that it was not thrown back into the harbor. It was given a tag, just like everything else. But while the statues were being prepared for their grand debut, the lump was destined for obscurity. It was logged, probably with a vague and uninspired description like unidentified bronze object, heavily corroded. It was then placed in a rough wooden crate, possibly with a dismissive thud, and loaded onto a cart. There was no fanfare for its journey through the streets of Athens. It wasn't paraded past cheering citizens. It was just part of the administrative cleanup. You watch it go, a box of junk trundling along behind the carts carrying the real treasures. At the National Archaeological Museum, the separation is immediate. The statues and finer pieces are taken to the main conservation labs and galleries upstairs, areas filled with light, scholarly debate, and the gentle clinking of restorers' tools. Your lump goes somewhere else, downstairs most likely, into a storeroom, a place with cool, damp air, rows of wooden shelves, and the quiet company of other forgotten things. It is placed on a shelf, its stag facing out, and then the door is closed. For the next 2 years, it will sit there in the dark, gathering dust on top of its 2,000-year-old coat of sea grime. The world outside will celebrate the Antikythera treasures, but the greatest treasure of all lies in the basement, a silent, patient puzzle box, waiting for someone to finally notice it. 2 years pass. You're no longer in the cold sea or on the bustling dock. You're now in the quiet, climate-controlled stillness of the National Archaeological Museum storeroom. It is May 17th. Yaljoringar. Upstairs, the sounds of restoration continue. The gentle tap-tap-tap of hammers on chisels, the soft whisk of brushes cleaning marble, the low murmur of scholarly debate. The Antikythera treasures are the talk of Athens of the world. The youth is slowly being freed from its green crust, revealing the stunning craftsmanship beneath. The philosopher is getting a proper cleaning. They are stars. Down here in the dim light of the basement, it's a different world. It's a world of silence, dust motes dancing in the occasional sunbeam slanting through a high window. The air smells of old clay, dried wood, and the faint, sharp tang of preservation chemicals. And on a sturdy wooden shelf among other miscellaneous finds, the lump sits. Forgotten, ignored, by failure, a disappointment. But inside the lump, something is happening. A slow, invisible war is being waged by chemistry and physics. The lump isn't a solid piece of bronze. It was originally a device of bronze and wood housed in a wooden case. When you brought it up from the seabed, it was saturated with salt water. Now in the dry air of the storeroom, it's drying out. But the different materials are drying at different rates. The wood shrinks. The metal, while not shrinking, is reacting with the trapped salt and air. Salt crystals are forming within its fine cracks, expanding with microscopic but irresistible force. Imagine a tiny, silent pressure building up day by day for 2 years. A tension is growing at the heart of the ugly green lump. Then, on this particular May afternoon, that tension reaches its breaking point. There is a sound, a sharp, sudden crack. It's not loud, but in the profound silence of the storeroom, it echoes like a gunshot. The lump, the solid-seeming concretion, splits open. It breaks apart into several smaller pieces, revealing for the first time in 1,000 years what was hidden inside. The destruction of the artifact is the beginning of its discovery. It's a moment history almost missed. It could have been swept up by a cleaner, the fragments tossed in a bin. But fate, it seems, had other plans. That day, a politician named Karapanos was visiting the museum, and the director, eager to show off the famous statues, brought him upstairs to assist with the tour and provide expert commentary. The museum calls on one of its senior archaeologists, a man named Valerio Stiles. After the tour, Stiles, perhaps on his way back to his office, decides to walk through the storerooms. We don't know why. Maybe it was part of his routine. Maybe he was looking for something else. This is one of those small, unrecorded moments that hinges the door of history. Some historians suggest he was specifically checking on the condition of the lesser finds, a testament to his diligence. He sees the broken lump on the shelf. His first reaction is likely annoyance. An artifact has been damaged. He walks over to inspect it, probably preparing to write a report on improper storage conditions. He picks up one of the larger fragments. The outer side is the familiar, lumpy green corrosion. But the inner, freshly exposed surface is something else entirely. It's not a solid mass of corroded metal. His eyes, trained to see the faintest traces of human workmanship on pottery shards and stone, now see something that makes no sense. He sees layers. He sees perfectly circular shapes. He sees lines radiating from a central point. And then he sees it. Nestled within the corroded matrix is the unmistakable shape of a gear wheel. It's small, made of bronze, and its teeth are cut in perfect, equilateral triangles. This is not a natural formation. This is not some abstract decoration. This is part of a machine of breathtaking complexity, with gears packed together in a tight, intricate dance. You can imagine him standing there, frozen in the dusty silence of the storeroom. Everything he knows about the Hellenistic period, about ancient technology, says this is impossible. The Greeks were masters of art, philosophy, and architecture. They were not known for creating clockwork mechanisms this complex. That kind of precision engineering, particularly the use of gear trains, wasn't supposed to have appeared for another 1,000 years in the great astronomical clocks of medieval Europe. He looks from the fragment in his hand to the other pieces on the shelf. Inside them, he can see more gears, more dials, more impossibly small and precise components. He is holding a ghost, a piece of technology from a future that happened in the distant past. The ugly green lump was a lump at all. It was a box containing the secrets of the cosmos, and it had just cracked itself open. Valerio Stiles' discovery should have been a bombshell, a precisely geared machine from the 2nd century BCE. It was like finding a fully functional steam engine in a pharaoh's tomb. He publishes his findings, making the bold claim that what he is examining is a kind of astronomical clock, a H or a logion. He points to the gear, the divided circles, the evidence of sophisticated calculation. He believes he has found proof of a lost technological tradition mentioned only in whispers by writers like Cicero, and the reaction from the international academic community is a collective, polite shrug. A few scholars take notice, but mostly, his theory is met with skepticism, if not outright dismissal. You have to understand, the intellectual framework of the time simply had no room for the subject. The consensus was that ancient technology peaked with the lever, the pulley, and some clever uses of water and steam for simple automata, more like temple toys than serious machinery. Complex gear trains were a medieval invention period. To suggest otherwise was academic heresy. So, the arguing begins. You are no longer a lump of corroded bronze, you are now an anomaly, a problem to be explained away. One theory, popular for a time, is that you are not ancient at all. Proponents of this idea claimed you must be a much later object, perhaps a Byzantine-era clock or astrolabe that, through some bizarre confluence of events, fell onto the ancient shipwreck and became fused with its cargo. It was easier to believe in a 1 in a billion accident than to rewrite the entire history of technology. Another group of scholars tried to fit you into a familiar box. They argued you were simply a very fancy astrolabe, a navigational instrument used to measure the altitude of stars. While you do share some features with an astrolabe, this was a massive oversimplification, ignoring the dozens of gears churning away inside you, something no astrolabe ever had. The debate, of course, goes nowhere because no one is undertaking a systematic, in-depth study. The fragments are delicate, the inscription almost unreadable, and the technology to properly examine you without causing more damage simply doesn't exist yet. So a quiet compromise is reached. You are moved from the dark storeroom upstairs into the main museum gallery. You get your own glass case, but you are presented not as a machine, but as a mystery, a curiosity. The museum label is vague and non-committal, something along the lines of fragment of an astronomical instrument. And there use it. For 50 years, half a century, use it in your glass case, a silent bronze enigma. The great statues around you, the youth and the philosopher, draw the crowds. People walk past your case, glance at the jumble of broken, greenish pieces, read the confusing label, and move on. You become part of the museum's furniture. Generations of visitors, historians, and archaeologists see you. Some, like the German philologist Albert Rehm in the 1922, take a closer look and agree with Stey's early assessment, convinced you are a calculating machine of unparalleled genius. But these are lone voices, footnotes in the grand accepted narrative. The academic world, for the most part, has made up its mind. You are an interesting but unsolvable puzzle, probably less significant than you appear. Imagine the quiet irony of your existence. In one part of the gallery, the world marvels at the artistry of the Greeks, their ability to capture the human form in bronze and marble. But here in your dusty case lies the proof of their genius in another field entirely in mathematics, astronomy, and precision engineering. It's a genius so profound that the modern world can't even recognize it when it's staring them in the face. Historians today are still debating the exact reasons for this half-century of intellectual inertia. Was it a simple lack of appropriate technology? Was it academic conservatism? Or was it a collective failure of imagination? You are a paradox. You are on public display, yet completely hidden in plain sight. You are a machine that tracked the heavens, but you are frozen in time. The gears that once followed the subtle dance of the moon and the sun are locked in a matrix of corrosion. The knowledge you held of eclipses, of calendars, of the intricate cycles of the cosmos is trapped, silent. For 50 years you are not a computer, not a clock, not even a proper instrument. You are just a strange stone in a museum. But your slumber is nearing its end. The world is changing. World War I will come and go. A new generation of scientists and historians will arise, armed with new tools and new ways of thinking. And one of them, the man from halfway across the world, is about to become obsessed with you. The year is 1951. The smoke of the Second World War has cleared, leaving behind a world eager to rebuild and, in many ways, rediscover its past. In the quiet halls of academia, a new kind of scholar is emerging, one who feels just as comfortable with scientific principles as with ancient texts. Enter Derek John DeSolo Price. HES not your typical tweed-wearing classicist. HES a British physicist, a historian of science, and a man with a magpie's fascination for odd scientific instruments. He has a brilliant, restless mind that sees connections where others see only disparate facts. Your story for him begins with a casual conversation. HES visiting a colleague, a professor of Greek epigraphy, when the professor mentions a strange object at the National Archaeological Museum in Athens. He describes a Hellenistic geared device, a kind of clockwork machine found in a shipwreck. Price's interest is instantly piqued. A geared machine from the Hellenistic period. It sounds like a myth, a technological tall tale, but the seed is planted. For the next several years, you are a puzzle rattling around in the back of his mind. A fascinating but distant anomaly. His real obsession begins in 1958. HES in Athens for a different research project, and he finally has the chance to see you for himself. He goes to the National Museum. He finds your dusty glass case, tucked away amongst the more celebrated artifacts. He peers through the glass, his trained eye scanning the fragmented, corroded remains. He sees what others had seen, a jumble of bronze pieces, some with circles, some with lines. But Price sees more. He sees the shadow of a system. His background in physics and the history of instruments allows him to recognize the ghost of a machine. He sees not just one gear, but the faint outlines of an entire gear train. He sees the remnants of dials with precise scientific caloridians. He is utterly captivated. This is not just an astrolabe. This is not some medieval contraption that fell in the sea. This, he realizes, is authentically ancient, and it is more complex than anything he has ever seen from that era. He feels an immediate, visceral connection to the unknown creator of this device, a kinship across to millennia. He knows with a certainty that will define the rest of his career that he has to understand how you work. He has to unbox your secrets. Price begins a long and often frustrating campaign to gain access to you. This is not as simple as it sounds. You are a national treasure, however misunderstood. You are fragile. The museum authorities are rightly protective. He spends months negotiating, writing letters, pulling strings, using all his academic clout. Finally, in 1959, he is granted permission to study you directly. This is the moment. For the first time since Valerio Esta has picked you up from the dusty shelf, you are the subject of a dedicated, systematic investigation. Price, working with the museum staff, carefully removes your fragments from their case. He handles them with a reverence that borders on the religious. He lays them out on a table, arranging the 80 to separate pieces like a detective laying out clues from a crime scene. Historians are still debating the exact sequence of his initial discoveries, trying to reconstruct his thought process from his notes. What did he see first that confirmed his suspicions? Was it a specific gear combination? A half-deciphered word on an inscription? He begins to clean the fragments gently, meticulously under a microscope. He uses tools as simple as a dental pick and a soft brush, painstakingly removing the layers of concretion and corrosion that have hidden your features for centuries. And as the grime of 2,000 years falls away, the true genius of your design begins to emerge. He uncovers more gears, each with triangular teeth cut with incredible precision. He finds dials inscribed with the months of the Egyptian calendar and the signs of the Greek zodiac. He finds faint, almost ghostly, inscriptions in Koine Greek, tiny letters less than 2 millimeters high, spelling out astronomical terms. He realizes you are not just one device, but several, all integrated into a single, compact machine. There's a calendar on the front, showing the position of the sun and moon in the sky, and on the back, there are 2 large spiral dials, one for predicting lunar and solar eclipses, and another for tracking the timing of Pan-Hellenic games, like the Olympics. It's a complete cosmological calculator. Price is thunderstruck. The people who built this weren't just clever artisans. They were brilliant theoretical astronomers and master engineers. They had found a way to mechanize the heavens. He is alone in this belief for a long time, a man possessed by a vision of lost ancient genius. His obsession is seen by many of his peers as a bit eccentric, a wild goose chase. But Price is undeterred. He knows he's on the verge of something monumental. He just needs a way to see inside you. Derek de Sola Price has a problem. A beautiful, maddening problem. He has you, or at least your 82 broken pieces, laid out before him. He has cleaned your surfaces, deciphered fragments of your inscriptions, and confirmed the existence of several gears. He knows you are a machine of genius. But HES like a man trying to understand a supercomputer by only looking at the outer case and a few exposed wires. The heart of the matter, the intricate web of gears that makes you tick, is still locked inside the largest fragments, fused together by 2 millennia of corrosion. He can't just break them open. That would be an act of archaeological vandalism, destroying the very thing HES trying to understand. He needs a way to see through solid metal. He needs X-ray vision. And so, in the early 1972, Price embarks on the next phase of his quest. He enlists the help of Charalambos Karakalos, a radiologist at the Greek National Center for Scientific Research Democratics. This collaboration is in itself a pioneering move. Using industrial gamma rays and X-rays to study ancient artifacts was not standard practice. It was a technique more at home in a hospital or a factory than in a museum. But you are not a standard artifact, so begins a strange and delicate procedure. You are taken from your quiet museum nook to a place of humming machines and radiation warnings. Your largest fragments, the ones holding the most secrets, are placed carefully on a platform. There is no audience, just a few scientists in white coats, their faces tense with anticipation. They aim a machine at you, a device that emits a silent, invisible energy. For the first time, a force unknown to your creators passes straight through your bronze body. On the other side, a photographic plate waits to catch the shadows you cast. The process is slow, methodical. They take dozens of images from every conceivable angle, building up a composite picture of your inner world. When the first plates are developed, the team gathers in a dark room, watching as the images slowly emerge from the chemical bath. What they see is breathtaking. It's not a crisp, clear blueprint. The images are faint, hazy, and confusing. They look like ghostly photographs of a mechanical phantom. The layers of bronze, all pancaked together, create a confusing overlap of shapes. It's a spectral jumble of circles, lines, and darks. But to Price, these ghostly images are the Rosetta Stone of your mechanics. He spends countless hours poring over them, his face inches from the glowing light table. He projects them onto his wall, tracing the faint outlines with a pencil. Slowly, painstakingly, he begins to untangle the phantom limbs of your gear train. A faint circle he resolves into a gear with a specific number of teeth. A blurry line there proves to be the axle connecting it to another, deeper inside. It's like trying to understand the anatomy of a ghost. He is mapping your soul. This is where one of your most interesting, and for a long time, controversial secrets is revealed. Price, by carefully counting the faint teeth on these radio things, makes a discovery that solidifies your purpose. He identifies a large gear with exactly 235 teeth. This isn't a random number. To an astronomer, 235 is magic. It is the number of lunar months in the 19-year Metonic cycle, a cornerstone of Greek calendrical science. This was the cycle used to reconcile the solar year with the lunar month, to keep calendars from drifting out of sync with the seasons. Finding a 235th gear inside you is like finding a component in a modern device labeled processor. It confirms beyond any doubt that you are a calendrical computer of astonishing sophistication. Yet, these ghostly images also create new arguments. While some gears, like the Metonic one, are clear enough, others are not. The radio things are too fuzzy, the layers too compressed. Is that shadow a gear with 38 teeth or 39? Does this axle connect to that gear or the one behind it? Price creates the first complete schematic of your gearing, a revolutionary achievement. But it is, by his own admission, partly based on interpretation and educated guesses. Other scholars, looking at the same fuzzy X-rays, propose slightly different arrangements, different tooth counts. The academic world, which had once dismissed you entirely, now begins to argue about the precise details of your internal organs. The debate over your exact gear tooth counts, sparked by these phantom images, will rage for decades, a testament to how difficult it was to reverse engineer a ghost. You have been revealed, but only as a shadow. The X-rays have proven that inside your corroded shell lies a clockwork of celestial genius. Price has sketched your skeleton, but the full, living, breathing machine remains a tantalizing mystery. To truly understand you, someone would need to go deeper, with a technology that could not only see through you, but digitally slice you apart, layer by layer, without ever laying a hand on your fragile bronze body. That technology was still decades in the future. For now, you are a beautiful, intricate ghost, captured on film. Now that Price has given you a skeletal blueprint, you can begin to explore the user interface. Imagine you're holding the original device, or at least a perfect reconstruction. It's housed in a wooden box roughly the size of a shoebox or a large book, with a hinged door on the front and back. You open the front door. What you see is not a screen with glowing pixels, but a single large, beautiful bronze dial. This is your main display, the face of the cosmos. At the very center of the dial is a small, now lost, globe of the Earth. From this center, several pointers, also lost to time, would have radiated outward. One, certainly, for the sun, another for the moon. Then perhaps, as we'll discuss later, for the 5 planets visible to the naked eye. Turning a small knob or hand crank on the side of the box would set the entire mechanism in motion, causing these pointers to glide silently across the dial, mimicking the heavens. You are essentially holding a miniature, mechanical planetarium. The dial itself is not just a blank circle. It's a masterpiece of data visualization. It's comprised of 2 concentric rings, packed with information. The outer ring is the main calendar. But this isn't the 365, 25-day solar calendar we're used to. This is the Egyptian calendar, the go-to administrative and scientific calendar of the Hellenistic world. Why? Because it was simple and predictable. It had 12 months of exactly 30 days each, plus 5 extra days at the end of the year. No leap years, no complicated rules. It was a tidy, 365-day system that astronomers loved for its mathematical elegance. The names of these months, Thoth, Phaophi, Hathaway, are inscribed on the ring in elegant Greek letters. Just inside this ring of Egyptian months is a second, more familiar circle. This is the zodiac, the 12 constellations that form the backdrop for the sun's annual journey through the sky. Aries, Taurus, Gemini, all are there, their names clearly engraved. What's fascinating, and a point of some academic debate, is that this zodiac ring isn't fixed. It can be shifted, rotated slightly in relation to the Egyptian calendar ring outside it. Why? To account for the leap year. The Egyptian calendar of 365 days would, over time, slip out of alignment with the true solar year and thus the zodiac. This movable ring allowed the user to manually make a 1-day correction every 4 years, keeping the zodiac signs properly aligned with the dates. It's a clever, low-tech solution to a high-tech problem. So, as you turn the knob on the side, you'd see the sun pointer move across the dial. On any given day, you could instantly see the date in the Egyptian calendar and the sun's precise position in the zodiac. For example, on the 15th day of the month of Thoth, the sun might be pointing to the 20th degree of Leo. This was your primary function, a perpetual calendar of the sun and moon. But this front dial holds another secret, a much more human one, hidden in the inscriptions. Among the technical astronomical terms, archaeologists have found what appear to be parapegma inscriptions. A parapegma was a kind of star almanac used by ancient Greeks, which listed the risings and settings of major stars and constellations throughout the year. But it didn't just list astronomical events. It often linked them to weather predictions and agricultural activities. For example, an inscription might say, "When the star Sirius rises, the summer heat begins," or "When the Pleiades set, it is time for the autumn planting." This is a wonderful, quirky detail. It suggests you weren't just a tool for abstract scientific research in an observatory. You were meant to be a practical device, a desktop reference for a wealthy landowner or a merchant. You could use it to track the formal calendar, but also to know when to expect the sea on winds to start blowing for sailing, or when the weather was right to harvest your olives. It's a beautiful marriage of hard science and folk wisdom, a kind of ancient farmer's almanac written in bronze. The existence and exact function of these parapegma inscriptions are still being studied, as many are too faint to be read clearly. Scholars argue about how extensive this weather prediction feature really was. Was it a core function, or just some added flavor text? Either way, it paints a picture of a device that connected the grand, clockwork motions of the heavens to the everyday lives of the people who used it. Now, let's venture behind that elegant front island into the guts of the machine. This is where the real magic happens, where mathematics is transformed into motion. You are now inside a world of bronze, a miniature, metallic universe of interlocking teeth and turning axles. It's dark, it's intricate, and it's a place of pure, mechanical genius. The core of your function, the engine that drives the sun and moon pointers on the front, is a deceptively simple-looking gear train. At the beginning of this train is the main input, the doctor wheel. This is what connects to the hand crank on the side of the box. When a user turns that knob, this first gear begins to rotate. Let's call it Gear A. This is the prime mover. Now Gear A doesn't act alone. Its teeth mesh perfectly with another gear, Gear B. When Gear A turns, it forces Gear B to turn as well. This is the fundamental principle of your entire operation, the transfer of motion. But your creator wasn't just moving things, they were calculating. The gears are not all the same size. They have different numbers of teeth. And this is the key. Imagine Gear A has 20 teeth and it meshes with Gear B, which has 40 teeth. For every one full rotation of Gear B, Gear A has to make the complete turns. This is a gear ratio of 2e. By carefully choosing the number of teeth on each gear in a sequence, your designer could create incredibly precise mathematical ratios. It's a way of doing complex division and multiplication using physical objects. So from the main doctor gear, a whole series of these interconnected wheels, a gear train, branches out. One path is for the sun. After a few gears translate the rotation, an axle passes through the heart of the mechanism to the front dial, turning the sun pointer. The overall gear ratio for this path is designed to be 3,651 or something very close to it. One turn of the input knob might represent 1 day, and after 365 turns, the sun pointer has made 1 full circle of the zodiac. The path for the moon, however, is far more complicated. The moon cycle isn't a neat whole number. It circles the Earth in approximately 27. 3 days, the sidereal month. Replicating this requires a more complex set of gear ratios. So the gear train for the moon involves several more gears, each with a very specific, carefully calculated number of teeth to approximate this tricky astronomical value. Price's X-rays reveal the key part of this lunar train, a large gear with 127 teeth meshing with a smaller one of 32 teeth. The ratio 12,732 is a very clever ancient approximation of the moon's monthly journey. What's truly mind-boggling is the craftsmanship. These are not rough, clunky cogs. You're looking at gears as small as a fingernail, with teeth that are perfect equilateral triangles, each tooth just over a millimeter long. How did they do it? There's no evidence of the kind of precision file tools we would use today. The prevailing theory is that they must have used a system of dividers and templates to painstakingly mark out the position of each tooth on a bronze blank, then cut them by hand with a fine sword chisel. The level of skill required is immense. A single misplaced tooth on one gear would throw the entire calculation off, causing errors that would multiply down the line. It's a testament to a lost school of Hellenistic micromechanics. The historical debate here is fierce. Academics argue whether this was the work of a single lone genius or a workshop of highly specialized artisans. Was there a master who designed it and technicians who fabricated the parts? The mechanism itself is silent on this point, and there's a quirky, almost unbelievable detail that modern scans have revealed. When the creator made a mistake on one of the main gears, cutting 222 teeth instead of the required 223, they didn't throw it away. They couldn't. It was too valuable. Instead, they carefully squeezed one of the tooth spaces shut, effectively adding the missing tooth to the count, a tiny, almost invisible correction that saved the component and kept the cosmic calculation on track. It's a wonderfully human touch, a reminder that this perfect machine was made by an imperfect, but incredibly clever hand. You are not just a product of abstract theory, you are a physical object built with skill, ingenuity, and even the occasional fudge factor. You've mapped the basic gear trains for the sun and moon. The sun is predictable, a steady celestial timekeeper. But the moon is a troublemaker. It has always been the problem child for astronomers. It refuses to move in a simple, uniform way. If you were to watch it carefully night after night, you'd notice it doesn't travel across the zodiac at a constant speed. For part of its monthly journey, it seems to hurry, covering more ground than expected. Then it will appear to linger, slowing down as if catching its breath before speeding up again. This is what astronomers call the first anomaly of the moon, a rhythmic speeding up and slowing down caused by its elliptical orbit. To the ancient Greeks, this was a profound puzzle. Their philosophical ideal was a cosmos of perfect circles and uniform motion. The moon's weird waltzing dance was a cosmic imperfection that needed to be explained and, more importantly, predicted. A simple gear train with fixed ratios, like the one for the sun, could never replicate this. It would be like trying to play a piece of music with shifting tempos on a simple music box that can only play at one steady speed. The moon pointer on your machine would quickly fall out of sync with the real moon in the sky, making the whole device useless for accurate predictions. So how did your creator solve this? Did they just ignore it and settle for an approximation? No. They did something so clever, so unexpectedly brilliant, that it baffled researchers for decades after its rediscovery. When modern scientists created the first high-resolution 3D models of your interior, they found a tiny, exquisite subassembly, a mechanical secret hiding in the lunar gear train. Let's zoom in on it. You see two gears, one stacked on top of the other, but they don't look quite right. Their centers aren't aligned. One gear is deliberately mounted slightly off-center from the gear below it. The bottom gear turns at a steady, constant rate, driven by the main gear tray. On the face of this bottom gear, there's a small pin sticking up. This pin fits neatly into a slot that's been cut into the face of the top gear. This is the famous pin and slot mechanism. Now, watch what happens when you turn the machine's main crank. The bottom gear rotates smoothly. The pin on its face travels in a perfect circle at a constant speed. But because the top gear is off-center, the pin's journey inside its slot has a dramatic effect. As the pin moves into the part of its circular path that is farthest from the top gear's center, it has more leverage and it forces the top gear to turn faster. Then, as the pin continues its journey and moves to the point closest to the top gear's center, its leverage decreases and the top gear slows down. The result is magical. The smooth, constant rotation of the bottom gear is transformed into the variable, rhythmic, speed up and slow down rotation of the top gear, and the final moon pointer on the front dial is driven by this top gear. This little mechanical ballet of the pin dancing in its slot perfectly mimics the moon's quirky behavior in the sky. It is a physical, mechanical solution to a complex astronomical problem. This discovery was a watershed moment for understanding you. It proved that your creators weren't just approximating the heavens, they were modeling its known anomalies with breathtaking ingenuity. This isn't just clockwork, it's a differential analyzer. It's a mechanism that adds and subtracts speeds. And this, of course, sparked a whole new round of academic debate. The question is no longer if you could model a lunar anomaly, but how the creators thought about it. Were they working from a fully developed geometric theory of epicenters, the idea that the moon moved in a small circle that was itself carried along a larger circle, and then designed this mechanism to be a physical representation of that theory? This is the view many researchers hold. Or were they coming from a different direction? This is where a fascinating counter-argument comes in. Some historians propose that the creators might not have been thinking about abstract geometry at all. Instead, they may have been brilliant empirical engineers who, working from Babylonian astronomical tables that simply listed the moon's varying speed, figured out this mechanical trick that happened to produce the exact same numerical output. Were they master theoreticians building a model of their theory, or master tinkerers building a machine that simply matched the data? The debate continues to this day because the answer gets to the very heart of how science and technology were related in the ancient world. But whatever their thought process, the result is the same: a small, elegant device of bronze that gives the moon its soul, its fickle, dancing personality. You've seen how the front of the device maps the steady motion of the sun and the strange, dancing rhythm of the moon. It's an elegant display of what is happening in the heavens right now. But your creator's ambition went far beyond just telling the current date. They wanted to predict the future. They wanted to know when the celestial order would be dramatically, terrifyingly interrupted. They wanted to predict when the lights would go out. So, you carefully close the front panel, securing the cosmic clock face. You turn the box over in your hands. The back is covered by another large panel, also hinged. When you swing it open, you don't see the chaotic jumble of the main gear train. Instead, you are greeted by another masterpiece of design, two large, flat dials that dominate the entire surface. But these are not the simple circles you saw on the front. These are spirals. Like the grooves on a vinyl record or the shell of a nautilus, the calibration lines curl inwards in a graceful, sweeping arc. It's a beautifully efficient way to pack a huge amount of information into a limited space. Let's focus on the upper spiral dial. A long pointer, now lost, would have once traced this spiral path, taking years to complete its journey from the outside edge to the center. The spiral track itself is marked with 223 divisions. As you trace the path with your finger, you notice that certain positions are marked with little symbols, tiny glyphs inscribed in the bronze. You see the Greek letter sigma, for Heliac, the sun, and you see the letter Eta, which scholars believe stood for Selene, the moon. These are markers. They are eclipse warnings. You have just discovered the machine's primary predictive function. This entire, intricate spiral is a mechanical calculator for the Saros cycle. The Saros cycle was a discovery, probably first made by Babylonian astronomers and later adopted and refined by the Greeks. That is the secret key to unlocking eclipse prediction. They observed that every 223 lunar months, which is about 18 years, 11 days, and 8 hours, the sun, moon, and earth return to almost the exact same geometrical alignment. This means that the pattern of eclipses repeats every 223 months. It's the universe's own subtle, long-term rhythm. The 223 divisions on your spiral dial correspond to the 223 months of the Saros cycle. As the pointer, driven by the complex gears inside, slowly moved along this track, it would point to the current month in the cycle. When it passed over a slot marked with a sigma, the user knew a solar eclipse was possible. When it passed an Eta, a lunar eclipse was due. Even more astonishing, later studies have revealed that the inscriptions likely contained more detail, describing the eclipse's characteristics, like its magnitude or even its color. Some glyphs have been tentatively translated as fiery or dark. You are looking at a 2,000-year-old eclipse forecast. But there's a problem. Remember that little 8 hours tagged onto the end of the Saros cycle. That's a cosmic headache. It means that a repeating eclipse doesn't happen at the same time of day. It happens about 8 hours later. And more importantly, it happens over a different part of the Earth. An eclipse visible in Greece in one cycle might be visible only from, say, the middle of the Atlantic Ocean in the next. How could the machine account for this? The answer lies in a smaller, subsidiary dial nestled within the main Saros spiral. It's called the Exel-Igums dial, and it is a work of pure genius. The word Exel-Igums in Greek means turning autocorrection. This little dial tracks a cycle of 3 Saros periods, 54 years and 33 days. After this longer cycle, the 8-hour shifts add up to a full 24 hours, and the eclipse pattern repeats at the same time of day and in the same location again. The Exel-Igums dial has 3 sectors. One is blank, meaning add 0 hours. The next is inscribed with the Greek letter 48H, meaning add 8 hours to the time of the eclipse. The third is inscribed with the letter for 16IS, meaning add 16 hours. So, for any given eclipse predicted by the main spiral, the user could glance at this tiny subdial to know by how many hours they needed to adjust the timing to know when it would be visible in their part of the world. This feature is simply stunning. It elevates you from a local calendar to a astronomical computer, and it raises a huge, Fascinating question that historians are still hotly debating. Why this incredible obsession with predicting eclipses with such precision? Was it for science, to allow astronomers to be ready to observe and study these rare events? Was it for religion, allowing priests to prepare for what was often seen as a powerful divine omen? Or was it, as some suggest, a tool of political power? Imagine a king who could predict when the sun would vanish from the sky. He could use that knowledge to terrify his enemies, to convince his people of his divine favor, or to avoid undertaking a major battle on a day of ill omen. The mechanism itself doesn't say, it just provides the data. The motive remains shrouded in the mists of ancient ambition and belief. You've explored the dials and you've peeked at the gears, but so far you've been figuring this out like a reverse engineer, piecing together the function from the form. But what if you had the original instruction manual? What if the creator had left behind a guide explaining how to use their masterpiece? Incredibly, they did. It's written all over you. When archaeologists first looked at your fragments, they saw the obvious things. The dials, the gears, the pointers. But they also saw something else, something they almost dismissed as decorative scratches. Covering nearly every available flat surface on the front and back doors, on the plates that held the dials, were lines of text. Tiny, almost microscopic letters, inscribed with painstaking precision. Some of the letters are less than 5 millimeters high, smaller than the print on a modern coin. They are so small that for decades, they were largely considered unreadable, a ghostly whisper of text lost to the corrosion of time. This is where the story shifts from mechanics to a different kind of detective work, epigraphy, the study of ancient inscriptions. In the early 2000s, as part of a major international research effort called the Antikythera Mechanism Research Project, scientists brought in a new weapon. They used a specially designed 3D X-ray scanning technology called microfox computed tomography CT, a far more powerful version of the system Price had used. This allowed them to not only see the internal gears with unprecedented clarity, but also to look under the layers of corrosion on the surface. And as they processed the data, the ghostly scratches resolved into sharp, clear letters. They had found your user manual. Suddenly, you are no longer a silent object. You begin to speak. The text is written in Koine Greek, the common language of the Hellenistic world, and it's not just a few labels. The research team has so far been able to decipher over 3,400 characters, and they believe this is only a fraction of the original text. You are a technical document written in bronze. What does it say? It's not a philosophical treatise or a dedication to a king. It's a dry, technical, wonderfully nerdy description of what the user is looking at. On the front panel, next to the zodiac and calendar dials, the text describes the workings of the pair Big Ma, the star almanac. It confirms that the inscriptions relate to the risings and settings of specific stars, just as scholars had suspected. One deciphered phrase refers to the rising of the Pleiades cluster, a key event in the Greek agricultural calendar. But the real treasure is on the back. The inscriptions covering the back door are a detailed guide to the Saros and Exeligons dials. It's the help file for the eclipse predictor. The text explains what the spiral layout means. It confirms that the glyphs sigma and DTA stand for solar and lunar eclipses. It seems to describe the colors of predicted eclipses, using words like fire-colored or dark, which is a baffling detail. What did the color of an eclipse signify to the user? Did it relate to its perceived intensity, or did it carry some astrological meaning? This is a question scholars are still puzzling over. The manual explains the function of the Exeligons dial, that little 3-sector dial for correcting the eclipse times. It tells the user how to add 8 or 16 hours to their calculation. It is, in every sense, a step-by-step guide to seeing the future. Reading these inscriptions is like hearing the voice of the Creator speaking across the centuries. There's a cool, impersonal, scientific tone to the writing. It's the voice of an educator or teacher, patiently explaining their complex instrument. There's a palpable sense of pride in the work, but no boasting. Just a clear, concise explanation of the cosmic facts, as the machine represents them. Of course, like everything else about you, this user manual is incomplete. Many of the inscriptions are still unreadable, either because the fragments are missing or the corrosion is too deep. And this incompleteness leads to more tantalizing debates. One of the biggest controversies surrounds a single deciphered number, 76. This number appears in the inscriptions near a description of a cycle. 76 years is the length of the Calliope peak cycle, a more accurate, longer-term refinement of the 19-year Metonic cycle used for the main calendar. This suggests you may have tracked not just one, but two different calendar systems simultaneously. The research team found a large gear with 223 teeth for the Saros cycle and another gear with 235 teeth for the Metonic cycle. But where is the 76-year cycle represented? Is there another hidden dial that's been lost? Was it part of a gear train that has been destroyed? The debate over the 76 and the Calliope peak cycle is a perfect example of how the user manual, even in its fragmented state, continues to generate new questions, pushing researchers to look even deeper into your design, hunting for features that the creator mentioned, but which time has hidden from view. So, you have this machine of impossible genius, a device that maps the heavens, predicts the future, and contains its own user manual. The next, and perhaps most human question is who? Who could have possibly conceived of unbuilt such a thing? You are an orphan of history found without a maker's mark or a signature. Your inscriptions describe what you do, but not who made you. For decades, this question has been a playground for academic speculation, a detective story with a list of brilliant but long-dead suspects. The first and most romantic name that always comes up is Archimedes. He is the most famous scientist and engineer of the ancient world, a towering figure from Syracuse who lived in the 3rd century BC, a little before your estimated construction date. The connection isn't just wishful thinking. The Roman writer Cicero, in his work De Republica on the Republic, described seeing two spheres or array rise that had been brought to Rome after the siege of Syracuse. One was a solid celestial globe, but the other was a much more complex device that, according to Cicero, showed the motions of the sun and moon and the 5 planets, and even predicted the eclipses of the sun and moon. The description is so tantalizingly close to your own capabilities that it's impossible to ignore. Could you be one of these legendary Archimedes machines? The timeline is a bit tricky. You are dated to the 2nd century BCE, likely between 150 and 100 BCE. Archimedes died in 212 BC, so you cannot be a machine he built with his own hands. However, the idea of a school of Archimedes is very powerful. Perhaps you were built by one of his students, or a student of his students, someone who inherited his mechanical knowledge and pushed it to an even greater level of sophistication. The idea is so compelling that for a long time the Archimedes tradition was the leading theory for your origin. But as researchers have delved deeper into your design, a new and arguably more convincing location has emerged, the island of Rhodes. In the 2nd century BC, Rhodes was not just a beautiful island. It was a global center for trade, diplomacy, and most importantly for science. It was the Silicon Valley of the Hellenistic world, and it was home to a succession of brilliant astronomers. The key figure here is Hipparchus of Nicaea, who spent much of his working life on Rhodes around 140 to 120 BCE, a period that aligns perfectly with your estimated date of creation. Hipparchus is arguably the greatest observational astronomer of antiquity. He catalogued the stars, he calculated the length of the year with remarkable accuracy, and he is credited with discovering the precession of the equinoxes. Crucially, he developed geometric models to explain the irregularities of the moon's orbit, the very same irregularities that your clever pin and slot mechanism models so perfectly. The astronomical theories embedded in your gears are pure Hipparchian science. The connection is so strong that many researchers are now convinced that you must have been designed either by Hipparchus himself or by someone in his immediate circle. And there's another clue pointing to Rhodes. Cicero, our helpful Roman chatterbox, mentions another brilliant polymath, Posidonius of Apamea. Posidonius ran a school on Rhodes in the early 1st century BCE, a little after your construction, and Cicero says that Posidonius too had constructed a sphere that when it revolved, showed the motions of the sun and moon and the 5 stars, by day and night. Again, the description is a near-perfect match. So you have two of the ancient world's most brilliant minds, Hipparchus and Poseidon, both connected to Rhodes, and both linked by ancient sources to the creation of machines just like you. This has led to the current leading theory that you were created in a workshop on Rhodes, steeped in the astronomical tradition of Hipparchus, and perhaps intended for export or use by someone like Poseidon. But this is where the academic debate gets wonderfully heated. Pinning your origin on a single great man like Hipparchus can be misleading. A machine this complex likely required more than just a brilliant theorist. It required a master craftsman, a metallurgist who knew how to work bronze, an instrument maker who could cut those impossibly fine gears. So, was the creator an astronomer who was also a master mechanic? Or was it a collaboration between a scientist and an engineer? An ancient world, Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak. Some historians argue we focus too much on the famous names and not enough on the anonymous, highly skilled artisans who must have existed to produce such a work. The great man theory versus the workshop theory is a classic historical argument, and you are its star exhibit. You might be the brainchild of Hipparchus, the handiwork of an unknown genius, or the product of a whole team of innovators. For now, your parentage remains uncertain, a tantalizing mystery that links the greatest names in Greek science to your silent, corroded gears. Let's pull the camera back. For a long time, the dominant popular image of the 1,000 years between the fall of Rome and the Renaissance has been one of stagnation, the Dark Ages. It's a narrative of lost knowledge, where the sophisticated science and engineering of the classical world vanished, only to be slowly and painstakingly rediscovered much later. You, in your little bronze box, are a direct and profound to that entire story. You don't just poke a hole in the Dark Ages narrative, you blow it wide open. You force us to ask a difficult question. If the 2nd century BCE had technology this advanced, what have we been missing? Your existence suggests that the Hellenistic period, that vibrant, multicultural era that stretched from the death of Alexander the Great to the rise of the Roman Empire, was not a gentle decline from the classical peak of Athens. Instead, it was a period of explosive, and perhaps largely forgotten, technological and scientific innovation. You are exhibit A in a case for a lost Hellenistic scientific revolution. You weren't born in a vacuum. You are the product of a very specific intellectual environment. The world you came from was one where Greek philosophy, with its emphasis on logic and geometry, collided with the vast, ancient datasets of Babylonian astronomy. For centuries, Babylonian scribes had meticulously recorded celestial events, creating huge libraries of clay tablets that were, in essence, astronomical spreadsheets. They knew what the planets would do, but their models for why were largely mythological. The Greeks, on the other hand, were obsessed with finding the underlying geometric causes. They wanted a rational, mechanical universe. You are the perfect synthesis of these two traditions, the precision data of the Babylonians made physical by the geometric genius of the Greeks. This was an age of great scientific institutions. The Library of Alexandria, the museum, the observatories on Rhodes, these were not just dusty archives. They were humming centers of research. Scholars there had access to knowledge from across the known world. Engineers were experimenting with pneumatics, hydraulics, and automata. Hero of Alexandria, working a bit later than your creation, described steam-powered engines and programmable robotic servants. While many of these were likely small-scale models or temple toys used to create magical effects, they show a deep understanding of mechanical principles. You are not a toy. You are a serious scientific instrument, but you come from the same inventive, mechanically minded culture. So where did it all go? This is one of the most poignant questions you raise. If they could build you, they could surely have built other, equally complex machines. There must have been a tradition of this kind of fine mechanical work. So where are the other examples? The answer is likely a combination of bad luck and bad materials. You survived because you were lost in a shipwreck, cocooned in a way that, while destructive, preserved your basic structure. If you had been left on land, you almost certainly would have been melted down. In later centuries, bronze was an incredibly valuable raw material for making swords, armor, cannons, or coins. A complex, obsolete scientific instrument would have been seen as a convenient source of high-quality metal. It's a sad thought, How many other Antikythera mechanisms ended up as a pile of Roman swords or a Byzantine church bell? This is a topic of intense, almost melancholy, debate among historians. Are you a lone survivor, the last of your kind, or are you just the only one we've been lucky enough to find so far? Your uniqueness makes you a black swan event for historians. You force a re-evaluation of the evidence. Scattered throughout ancient texts are cryptic references to automata, geared devices, and astronomical calculators. For centuries, these were often dismissed by scholars as exaggerations, rhetorical flourishes, or descriptions of much simpler devices. Now, with you as a physical benchmark, those texts have to be reread, taken more seriously. You lend credibility to the most fantastical sounding accounts. You prove that when Cicero described a machine that modeled the planets, he wasn't engaging in science fiction. He was reporting on the state of the art. You stand as a humbling reminder that the past is not always a simpler, more primitive version of our present. Sometimes it's a place of astonishing and almost completely lost technological brilliance. You've been revealed as a calendar, an eclipse predictor, and a model of the cosmos. It seems like you couldn't possibly hold any more surprises. But as the research team continued to painstakingly analyze the CT scans of your back panel, they found something completely unexpected, something that connects the grand, cosmic cycles of the heavens with a very human, very earthly cycle of competition and celebration. Let's go back to the back of the box. You have the large upper spiral dial for predicting eclipses, the Saros dial. Below it is a second, nearly identical spiral dial. For a long time its function was a complete mystery. The inscriptions here were even fainter, the corrosion even worse. Derek de Price, in his original study, correctly identified it as a calendar of some sort, but he couldn't figure out its purpose. It didn't seem to line up neatly with any of the major known astronomical cycles. It was another one of your frustratingly brilliant puzzles. The key was discovered when researchers managed to decipher a single, crucial word in the faint inscriptions associated with this lower dial. NEA. Nemea was not a major city or a star. It was the site of the Nemean Games, one of the 4 great Panhellenic games, the ancient festivals that brought the Greek world together. This single word was the key that unlocked the dial's entire purpose. Suddenly, the researchers knew what they were looking for. They re-examined the inscriptions, and more names began to emerge from the digital haze. ISDHMIA for the Isthmian Games held near Corinth, PYTHIA for the Pythian Games at Delphi, and, most importantly, OIMPIA for the most famous games of all, the Olympics. This lower spiral dial was a 4-year Panhellenic Games cycle tracker. It was, in essence, an ancient Olympic countdown clock. The spiral is divided into 4 sectors, one for each year of the Olympiad cycle. A pointer, moving along the spiral track, would indicate the current year in the cycle, and within each year's sector the dial would show which of the major games were scheduled to take place. For instance, in year 1, the pointer would indicate the Isthmian and Olympic Games. In year 2, it would show the Nemean Games, and so on. It was a complete sporting calendar for the ancient world's most important events. This is a wonderfully quirky, incredibly humanizing feature. Why would a device dedicated to the majestic, clockwork precision of the heavens bother to track sporting events? It reveals so much about the culture that created you. It shows that, for them, the cycles of human activity were deeply intertwined with the cycles of the cosmos. The Panhellenic Games were not just athletic competitions. They were deeply religious festivals tied to specific calendars and sacred truces. To know when the Olympics were happening was as important, in a practical sense, as knowing when the next full moon would be. This discovery also provides a powerful clue about your potential owner. An abstract astronomer in an observatory might not have needed a game cycle dial, but a wealthy merchant, a diplomat, or a nobleman absolutely would. Attending the games was a crucial part of the social and political life of the elite. It was where you made business deals, forged alliances, and showed off your status. Having a device that could accurately tell you when the next games were, years in advance, would have been an invaluable tool for planning your travel and social calendar. It transforms you from a purely scientific instrument into a kind of ancient personal digital assistant, a high-tech day timer for the Hellenistic 1%. Of course, like everything else, this dial raises its own set of academic arguments. The exact layout of the games on the dial is still being pieced together from the faint inscriptions. Some scholars have even proposed, based on a few hard-to-read glyphs, that the dial might have tracked other, lesser-known festivals as well, making it an even more comprehensive cultural calendar. Was the dial primarily for logistics, or did it have a deeper, astrological significance? Did the timing of the games align with certain astronomical events shown on the front of the device? The debate over whether this was a sports feature or a religious one continues, but in the Greek world, that was often a distinction without a difference. What's clear is that you are a machine that connected the orbits of the planets with the foot races of men, a perfect fusion of the sacred and the profane, the cosmic and the civic. By now, you've accepted that this machine is a work of genius. You've seen the eclipse predictions, the planetary models, the clever pin and slot for the moon. But there's one more feature, hidden deep within your metallic guts, that is so outrageously advanced, so chronologically out of place, that it represents what is perhaps your single greatest secret. It's a component that, according to the standard history of technology, shouldn't have been invented for another 1,500 years. Let's go back to the moon. You already know how the pin and slot mechanism accounts for the moon's varying speed, but there's another lunar cycle you have to track. On the front dial, you need one pointer to show the position of the sun and another to show the position of the moon. But what about the phase of the moon? New moon, first quarter, full moon, last quarter. This is determined not by the moon's position alone, but by its position relative to the sun. To show the lunar phase, you need a mechanism that calculates the difference between the motion of the sun pointer and the motion of the moon pointer. You need a way to perform mechanical subtraction. For decades after your discovery, researchers, including Derek de Sola Price, assumed this must have been accomplished with a simple workaround. They couldn't find the components for a more complex system in the hazy early X-rays. But when the high-resolution CT scans of the 2000 seconds allowed scientists to create a complete, verifiable 3D model of your entire gear train, they found it, and it left them speechless. Deep inside the mechanism at the heart of the lunar phase display system, you have a set of gears arranged in a configuration that looks like something out of a modern car's transmission. This is the EPI cyclic gear system, more commonly known as a differential gear. It's a device that takes two different input rotations and outputs a third rotation that is equal to their difference or their sum, depending on how it's configured. Let's try to visualize it. You have a gear representing the sun's motion turning at a certain speed. You have another gear, driven by the complex lunar train, representing the moon's motion, turning at a different speed. The differential takes these two inputs. One input turns a central sun gear. The other input turns an outer ring gear. In between these two, you have a set of smaller planet gears mounted on a spinning cage. These planet gears mesh with both the sun gear and the ring gear. The cage that holds these planet gears is the output. As the two inputs turn at different speeds, the planet gears are forced to walk around the central gear, and the speed at which their cage rotates is precisely proportional to the difference between the two input speeds. This output from the cage would have driven a small, half-silvered ball on the front dial, which would rotate to show the current phase of the moon. Finding a differential gear inside a 2,000-year-old machine is, to put it mildly, a shock. This technology is a cornerstone of modern mechanics. It's what allows the outer wheel of a car to turn faster than the inner wheel when you go around a corner, preventing the tires from skidding. The first known appearance of a differential in the historical record comes from the workshop of Leonardo da Vinci, but his was just a drawing, a concept. The first working models don't appear until the 16th and 17th centuries, and they aren't common until the 19th century clockmakers and later, the automotive industry. And yet here it is, fully formed, functional, and humming away in the 2nd century BCE. This discovery single-handedly demolished the timeline of mechanical history. It's not just that your creators were clever, it's that they had mastered a mechanical principle that was thought to be far beyond the reach of the ancient world. This was just an incremental advance. This was a quantum leap. This has inevitably led to one of the most intense and ongoing debates surrounding you. How is this possible? Did a lone genius like Archimedes or Hipparchus simply invent it out of whole cloth? A revolutionary idea that was then lost to history? Or, and this is a more disturbing thought for historians, was this technology actually more common than we think? This is the lost iceberg theory. Perhaps you are not the peak of Hellenistic engineering, but simply a standard, off-the-shelf example of it. What if devices like this were well known in their time, and it is only the sheer accident of history, the fires, the wars, the melting pots that has erased all other traces of them? This is where the term ancient astronaut gets laughingly thrown around by popular media, but the real historical question is much more profound. It forces us to confront the fragility of knowledge. It suggests that a sophisticated technological tradition, developed over generations, can vanish from the historical record so completely that its rediscovery 2,000 years later seems like a miracle. You are the proof. The differential gear inside you is a ghost from a world that was, in some ways, far more modern than we ever imagined. The question hangs in the air, heavy and persistent, troubling the minds of every historian, archaeologist, and engineer who studies you. Why are you the only one? If the Hellenistic world possessed the astronomical knowledge and the mechanical skill to create a differential gear, a pin and slot lunar anomaly corrector, and a multi-cycle eclipse predictor, then where is everything else? Where are your brothers and sisters, your less sophisticated cousins, the prototypes that must have come before you? Their absence is almost as mysterious as your existence. You are a technological orphan, a single, brilliant data point in a vast, empty chart. This is not how technology usually works. Think of the evolution of the automobile or the personal computer. It's a messy, branching tree. For every successful model, there are dozens of failed experiments, competing designs, and simpler, earlier versions. Innovation leaves a trail. You, however, seem to have left no trail at all. You just appear fully formed, a masterpiece of complexity, and then nothing. The next time anything even approaching your level of mechanical sophistication appears in the historical record is more than a millennium later, with the astronomical clocks of medieval Europe. So, what happened? Let's explore the theories, because this is one of the greatest debates you have sparked. The first and most straightforward theory is the one we've touched on before. The Great Melt. The vast majority of ancient bronze artifacts did not survive. Bronze was just too useful. Through the centuries of the Roman Empire, the Byzantine era, and the Middle Ages, scrap metal was a precious resource. When a complex machine like yours became obsolete or broke down, it wouldn't have been put in a museum. It would have been seen as a convenient brick of high-quality metal. It's a heartbreaking thought for an archaeologist, but a practical reality of the pre-industrial world. Your siblings were likely melted down to become shields, helmets, coins, plowshares, or church doors. You only survived because you were lost to the sea, hidden from the insatiable appetite of the scrap heap. In this view, you are not a miracle of creation, but a miracle of preservation. You are the last survivor of a forgotten technological lineage. The second theory is a bit more nuanced. It suggests that perhaps you weren't part of a widespread technological tradition, but rather the pinnacle of a very niche, very exclusive one. Perhaps there were only ever a handful of these devices created. They were not mass-produced. They were bespoke commissions for the ultra-elite, kings, philosopher princes, or the head priests of a major temple. They would have been astronomically expensive, the ancient equivalent of a supercomputer or a space telescope. The knowledge to build them might have been a closely guarded secret, passed down from a master to a single apprentice within a specific workshop, perhaps on Rhodes. If this tradition was small enough and localized enough, it could have been wiped out by a single event of fire in the workshop, the death of the master craftsman without an heir, or the Roman conquest of the city. In this scenario, you are a rare species that went extinct. A third, more controversial theory questions the very nature of Hellenistic innovation. Could it be that the Greeks, for all their genius, simply didn't have the right cultural mindset to kickstart a full-blown technological revolution? Their society was built on slave labor, which may have removed some of the economic incentive for creating labor-saving devices. Furthermore, their intellectual elite, the philosophers and mathematicians who designed you, often held a theoretical, abstract approach to knowledge. They were brilliant at geometry and theory, but the practical, hands-on work of building machines was often seen as a lower-class occupation. Perhaps this cultural divide between the thinkers and the tinkers prevented a sustained feedback loop of innovation. The genius was there, but the social and economic structure wasn't in place to capitalize on it. You might have been a magnificent intellectual exercise that never translated into a broader industrial or social change. This is a debate that is far from settled. Did the knowledge just get lost, or was it never truly widespread to begin with? Are we looking at an accident of preservation, the end of a very short line, or a cultural failure to launch? You sit at the center of this argument, offering no easy answers. You are a testament to what was possible, which makes the subsequent 1,000-year gap all the more profound and mysterious. You are a ghost reminding us that progress is not always a straight line. Sometimes it takes a brilliant, shining leap forward, and then falls silent for a very, very long time. You are an artifact without a context. To truly understand you, we need to understand the vessel that carried you, the catastrophe that preserved you. Let's leave the quiet of the museum and the hum of the laboratory and travel back in time, back to the choppy waters of the Aegean in the 1st century BCE. You are no longer a museum piece. You are cargo, carefully packed in your wooden case and stowed in the hold of a Roman merchant ship. What was this ship? For decades, it was known simply as the Antikythera Mechanism. But ongoing archaeological work, including recent excavations by an international team, has started to paint a much more detailed picture. This was not a small fishing boat. This was a massive Roman Novus I or Aria, a heavy cargo ship. Modern estimates suggest it was perhaps 40 to 50 meters, around 150 feet long, a true leviathan of its time, designed for long-haul luxury trade across the Mediterranean. Let's imagine its final voyage. The leading theory, based on the ship's construction and the style of the artifacts, is that it set sail sometime between 70 and 60 BC. Where was it coming from? The sheer wealth of Greek art on board, the bronze and marble statues, the fine pottery, the decorative glassware strongly points to a port in the eastern Mediterranean. Perhaps Pergamon or Ephesus on the coast of modern-day Turkey, or maybe even the island of Rhodes, your likely birthplace. The cargo feels like a curated collection, not just random plunder. It could have been a commission from a wealthy Roman patrician for his new villa, or perhaps a shipment of valuable goods being moved by a dealer in fine art. The destination was almost certainly Italy, probably the bustling port of Puteoli near Naples, or even Rome itself. This was the tail end of the Roman Republic, a time of immense wealth concentrated in the hands of a few powerful families. The taste for Greek art and culture was at its peak. A Roman aristocrat looking to display his sophistication and power would fill his home with Greek statues and his library with Greek philosophy. You, the intricate bronze computer, would have been the ultimate conversation piece, a testament to your owner's wealth and intellectual refinement. So the ship is laden with its precious cargo, a floating treasure chest. It successfully navigates the Aegean, island hopping its way west. The journey is likely uneventful for weeks, but then, as it passes the wild, rocky island of Antikythera, which lies at a treacherous crossroads between the Aegean and Mediterranean seas, disaster strikes. The weather in this region is notoriously unpredictable. A sudden violent storm, a northeastern gale perhaps, could have blown up with little warning. Imagine the scene on deck. The wind shrieks through the rigging. The massive single sail is likely torn to shreds or hastily cut away. The sky turns a bruised purple-gray. Waves, huge, mountainous swells, crash over the sides of the ship, sweeping away anything not tied down. The crew, seasoned sailors though they may be, are helpless against the storm's fury. The ship is tossed about, its heavy wooden timbers groaning under the strain. Below deck in the darkness of the hold, the cargo shifts. You are thrown against other crates. A marble statue breaks free from its bonds and smashes into a stack of amphorae. It's chaos. The ship is driven towards the unforgiving cliffs of Antikythera. The captain and crew fight to steer it away, but the rudder is useless against the power of the wind and waves. There is a final, terrible sound, the splintering crack of the hull as it smashes against a submerged reef. Water pours in cold and fast. The ship lurches, its back broken. Within minutes, it begins its final descent. For the men on board, there is no escape. The shore is a wall of jagged rocks, and the sea is a churning abyss. The ship, with its crew and its priceless cargo of art and science, sinks 30 meters, then 40, then 50, before finally settling on a steep sandy slope on the seabed. And then silence. The storm eventually passes. The sea grows calm. Sunlight filters down through the blue water, illuminating a scene of quiet devastation. The ship's wooden hull is shattered, its contents scattered across the seafloor. The magnificent bronze statues lie half buried in the sand, their elegant poses frozen for eternity. And you, in your broken wooden case, settle into the silt. This catastrophic event, a tragedy for the ship's crew and owner, is the sole reason for your survival. The sea that destroyed your vessel became your protector, cocooning you in a cold, dark, low-oxygen environment, saving you from the melting pots of the surface world. The debate about the ship's specific route and cargo continues. Was it one shipment? Or had it made multiple stops? Were there people other than the crew on board? Each new artifact recovered from the wreck adds a new clue to this 2,000-year-old maritime mystery. The story jumps forward to millennia. You've been discovered, poked, prodded, and X-rayed. Derek D. Soloprice has sketched your soul with his ghostly radio things, and the academic world has spent decades arguing about the fuzzy details. But it's now the dawn of the 21st century. Technology has taken a quantum leap. The question is no longer just what did you do, but can we see it for ourselves? Can we rebuild you, digitally, gear by gear? In the early 2000 seconds, an ambitious international collaboration is formed. It brings together archaeologists from the National Archaeological Museum in Athens, astronomers, physicists, and epigraphers from the UK in Greece, and crucially, imaging specialists from major tech companies like Hewlett-Packard and Dixtech Systems. This is the Antikythera Mechanism Research Project AMRP, and its goal is to finally, definitively, crack your code. They have a new generation of weapons in their arsenal. The first is a custom-built, 8-ton behemoth of a machine called the Blade Runner. It's a Microfox computed tomography CT scanner. Think of a hospital CT scanner, but with a resolution powerful enough to see details smaller than 1/10 of a millimeter. For the first time, your AD fragments are subjected to an intense but non-destructive 3D X-ray scan. The machine rotates you, taking thousands of high-resolution cross-sectional images or slices. These digital slices penetrate the layers of corrosion, revealing every hidden internal feature with stunning clarity. The ghosts that Price saw on his fuzzy films are about to get their substance back. The second piece of technology is called polynomial texture mapping (PTM). This is a photographic technique where an object is placed under a dome of lights, and dozens of pictures are taken, each with the light coming from a different angle. A special software then combines these images into a single, interactive digital file. This technique is used on your surface inscriptions. It allows researchers to manipulate the lighting on a virtual version of you on their computer screens. By moving the virtual light source, they can make incredibly faint, shallow scratches letters that are invisible to the naked eye pop out in sharp relief. The user manual that has been silent for 2,000 years is finally ready to be read. The data generated is immense, terabytes of it. Now begins the digital excavation. Teams of researchers huddle around high-resolution monitors, sifting through the thousands of CT slices. It's like being able to fly through solid bronze. They can peel away the layers of corrosion digitally, isolate a single gear, and rotate it in three-dimensional space. They can count its teeth with absolute certainty. The old debates from the 1970 seconds about whether a gear had 38 or 39 teeth are settled overnight. The answer is right there, crystal clear on the screen. This is how they confirm the existence of the differential gear. This is how they map the precise layout of the pin and slot lunar anomaly corrector. This is how they uncover the Olympic Games dial. They are digitally unboxing you, piece by piece, without ever touching the real artifact. They are building a complete, functioning 3D model of you in cyberspace. The PTM data is equally revelatory. The faint text on the backplate, once a source of endless speculation, becomes readable. The names of the Panhellenic games Nemea, Istihmea, Pythia, Olympia emerged from the digital grime. The instructions for the eclipse predicting Sorrow's dial, with its references to colors and timings, become clear. They can even read the Parapegma, the star almanac on the front, and match its descriptions to known astronomical events. But this new, startling clarity doesn't end the arguments. It just makes them more specific and more profound. The new data reveals features no one had ever suspected, leading to new debates. For example, the detailed scans of the front dials seem to suggest not just pointers for the sun and moon, but also for the 5 planets known to the ancients: Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. The team finds evidence of a complex CPI cyclic system, a planetary train that would have been required to model the complex retrograde motions of these planets. However, the gears themselves are missing. They were likely on a part of the mechanism that was lost or destroyed. So the current, fiercest debate is this: did you have a planetary display or not? The evidence is circumstantial but strong. Building a digital model that incorporates this missing planetary gear train has become a major challenge, a piece of high-tech academic detective work. You are no longer a mystery because of what is hidden, but because of what is lost. The digital unboxing is complete, but it has left behind tantalizing, empty spaces where more genius used to be. The digital models are one thing. They exist on a computer screen, a perfect ghostly simulation. But there's a primal human urge to see and touch a real, working object. After the AMRP published its groundbreaking findings in 2006, the world was left with a definitive blueprint of your design. The next logical and perhaps most exciting step was inevitable. Could someone actually rebuild you? Could the 2,000-year-old machine be brought back to life using modern tools? The challenge was taken up by workshops and dedicated individuals around the world. It became a new kind of quest, not of discovery, but of recreation. One of the most notable unsuccessful efforts was by a team at the Antikythera Mechanism workshop, led by mathematician Tony Freeth, a keen member of the original AMRP team and a retired British clockmaker named Martin B. Radshaw. They weren't just academics, they were artisans, obsessed with the same problems of mechanics and materials that your original creator must have faced. Their journey was a slow, painstaking process of trial and error. They had the CT scans, the gear counts, the schematics, but turning a digital model into a physical, working machine is a whole different challenge. They had to make choices. What material should they use? They chose bronze, just like the original, to replicate its weight and feel. How would they cut the gears? They used modern, computer-controlled milling machines to achieve the necessary precision, but the design of each tooth, that distinctive equilateral triangle shape, was copied exactly from your own. As they built, they gained a new, profound respect for the original maker. Every single component presented a puzzle. How do you fit over 30 gears into a space the size of a shoebox without them jamming? How do you create axles that are strong enough to turn the pointers but thin enough to nest inside each other? They discovered subtle, ingenious design choices that weren't obvious from the scans alone. For example, the way the creators slightly varied the thickness of the gears to distribute weight and reduce friction. They were not just rebuilding a machine. They were having a conversation with its long-dead engineer. One of the biggest challenges was reconstructing the parts that were missing, most notably the planetary display system. The AMRP research had proposed a plausible, elegant gear system that could model the complex motions of all 5 known planets, using a clever arrangement of nested DPI cyclic gears. But this was still a theory. Freeth and his team decided to build it. They fabricated the hypothetical planetary gear train and integrated it into their model. This was a moment of truth. Would the theory actually work in practice? The first time they assembled the entire reconstructed mechanism and turned the crank, it was a moment of pure magic. It worked. The sun pointer began its steady march through the zodiac. The moon pointer, driven by its spin and slot, did its weird waltzing dance, speeding up and slowing down. The eclipse pointer began its slow crawl along the Saros spiral. And on the front, the 5 new planetary pointers moved flawlessly, each at its own proper speed, even performing the strange loop-the-loop of retrograde motion, just as they appear to do from Earth. Watching the reconstruction in motion is a mesmerizing experience. It's like watching the mind of a Hellenistic genius come to life. The silent, corroded fragments in the museum are transformed into a dynamic, whirring, clicking sculpture of the cosmos. These reconstructions, which have been displayed in museums around the world, have done more to communicate your genius than any academic paper ever could. They make your complexity tangible. People can see with their own eyes how the gears translate abstract mathematics into physical motion. Of course, the reconstructions are also a source of debate. Is the planetary system they built the correct one? Since the original gears are lost, we can never be 100% certain. Some historians argue that other mechanical solutions were possible. The reconstruction is a best fit model, an incredibly educated and plausible guess, but a guess nonetheless. It's a bit like restoring a damaged painting. The restorer can use their expert knowledge to fill in the missing pieces, but it will always be an interpretation. These beautiful functioning replicas are the closest we can get to holding the real thing, but they also carry within them the ghost of our own modern understanding, a testament to the fact that some of the original creators' secrets may be lost to time forever. The modern reconstructions are a triumph. They click, they wear, and they bring your mechanical soul to life for a 21st century audience. They prove that the theories, born from fuzzy X-rays and digital ghosts, work in the real world. Yet as you watch these beautiful bronze replicas turn, you notice a certain emptiness on the main front dial. The sun pointer glides through the zodiac. The moon pointer does its elegant, hesitant dance. But what about the other wanderers of the sky? What about the planets? This is the frontier. This is the single biggest, most tantalizing, and most fiercely debated question in modern Antikythera research. Did you, in your complete and original form, track the 5 planets known to the ancient Greeks: Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn? The evidence for the prosecution the pro-planet camp is compelling, even if it is circumstantial. First, there are the ancient texts. Cicero's descriptions of the machines built by Archimedes and Poseidon are explicit. He doesn't just say they tracked the sun and moon. He specifically includes the 5 stars which are called wanderers. It sets a clear historical precedent. The idea of a planetary mechanical model was alive and well in the minds of the era's greatest thinkers. Second, there is the physical evidence of the fragments themselves. The front plate of the mechanism has empty spaces and mounting points that strongly suggest more pointers were intended to be there. Why design the faceplate with all that extra room? Furthermore, the advanced CT scans revealed a prime number puzzle in the gear teeth. The researchers found gears with tooth counts of 53, 107, and 214. These numbers have no obvious connection to the sun or moon cycles, but they are crucial for accurately modeling the long, complex cycles of planets like Jupiter and Saturn. It's like finding tires in the steering wheel in a garage. You can be pretty sure there was once a car, even if the engine is missing. Based on this evidence, the Antikythera Mechanism research project proposed a stunningly elegant theoretical model for how the planetary system would have worked. It would have involved a series of incredibly complex and compact TP. A cyclic gear trains gears riding on other gears, all nested together on a series of coaxial axles. Each planet would have its own little mechanical universe, accurately modeling its unique speed and its strange retrograde motion, that looping backwards dance it appears to do in our sky. This model is mathematically sound. It fits within the known dimensions of your wooden case, and it aligns perfectly with the advanced Greek astronomical theories of the time. The reconstructions built with this planetary system work. Too many. This is case closed. You were a true planetarian. But then there's the defense, the skeptics. Their argument is simple, powerful, and scientifically rigorous. Where are the gears? Not a single undisputed planetary gear has been found. The part of the mechanism where this complex system would have been housed is precisely the part that is missing, either destroyed in the wreck or lost to corrosion. The skeptics argue that while the planetary theory is beautiful, it's an argument from absence. It's a spectacular piece of reverse engineering, but it remains a hypothesis until a physical gear is found. This is where the academic debate gets wonderfully heated. Could the empty space on the front have been for something else entirely? Something we haven't even conceived of? Was it possible that you were a standard model, and the planetary display was a feature of a deluxe version that was planned but never implemented in this specific device? Some historians question the mechanical feasibility, the sheer complexity of accurately modeling 5 different planets, each with its own unique cycle and retrograde loop, in such a compact space would have been an immense challenge. The friction and stresses on the delicate gear teeth would have been enormous. Was it even possible to build a reliable machine that could do all this with the materials and tools they had? You are at the center of this grand unresolved argument. You are a puzzle with the most important pieces missing. The answer likely still lies at the bottom of the sea, near that rocky cliff face off the coast of Antikythera. Ongoing excavations of the wreck site hold the tantalizing promise of a definitive answer. Imagine a diver sweeping their metal detector over the sand, getting a faint beat. They dig carefully, and out of the silt comes a small, corroded bronze gear with, say, 107 teeth. Such a discovery would be the final vindication, the missing link that proves the planetary theory correct. Until that day, the lost planets remain your most profound and alluring secret, a ghost in the machine that scholars are still trying to grasp. You have been unboxed, X-rayed, digitally reconstructed, and physically rebuilt. We've called you the world's first analog computer, a calculator, an astronomical clock, a personal digital assistant for the Hellenistic elite. But what if you're something more? What if your primary purpose wasn't just to calculate, but to demonstrate, to make a profound philosophical statement? Let's step away from the technical details for a moment and consider the intellectual world you were born into. Greek philosophy, particularly the schools of Plato and Aristotle and their successors, was obsessed with the concept of the cosmos. To them, the universe wasn't a chaotic, random place. It was a single, ordered, harmonious system. The motions of the heavens were the ultimate expression of this divine order. They were regular, predictable, and governed by the beautiful, unchanging laws of mathematics and geometry. Now, imagine you are a philosopher or a teacher in the 2nd century BC, trying to explain this concept to your students or a wealthy patron. You can talk about it. You can draw diagrams in the sand. You can point to the sky. But what if you could show them? What if you could present them with a small, bronze model of that cosmic order, a miniature universe that they could hold in their hands? This is a powerful and increasingly popular way of thinking about you. Perhaps your most important function was as a philosophical instrument, a teaching tool. When the user turned your hand crank, they weren't just finding out the date or checking for the next eclipse. They were witnessing a demonstration of the fundamental nature of reality as they understood it. They were seeing the complex, and at times seemingly erratic, motions of the sun, moon, and planets all resolved back to the smooth, uniform rotation of a single input gear. It was a machine that turned chaos into order. It was a physical proof of the philosophical concept of a rational, mechanical universe. This view helps to explain some of your more puzzling features. Why include the bafflingly complex planetary display if it was indeed there? Not just for the practical purpose of knowing where Mars was, but to show that even the strange, looping, retrograde motion of the planets which seemed to defy the simple, circular perfection of the heavens could be explained and reproduced by a system of perfect, circular gears. You were a machine that tamed the anomalies that made the entire cosmos comprehensible. This idea also casts your relationship with astrology in a new light. In the Hellenistic world, astronomy and astrology were not the separate disciplines they are today. They were deeply intertwined. Knowing the position of the planets was crucial for casting horoscopes and making astrological predictions. But your purpose may not have been to churn out horoscopes like a fortune-telling machine. Instead, you could have been used to demonstrate the principles of astrology. A teacher could use you to show a student how different planetary alignments, conjunctions, oppositions came to be, providing a rational, mechanical basis for the astrological influences they were thought to possess. You were the theory, not necessarily the daily forecast. The academic debate here is subtle but important. Was your primary identity that of a calculator or a demonstrator? Were you a practical tool that also happened to embody a philosophy, or a philosophical statement that also happened to be a useful tool? The truth is likely somewhere in the middle. like a beautifully designed modern scientific instrument. You were probably both. You were built to provide accurate data, but your very existence, your elegance and your comprehensiveness, also made a powerful argument about the nature of the universe. This interpretation gives you a deeper, more resonant purpose. You are not just a piece of ancient tech. You are a conversation piece in the truest sense of the word. You are the focal point of a discussion about our place in the cosmos. You represent a worldview where the universe is not a series of random, inexplicable events, but a grand, intricate, and ultimately understandable machine. In a way, you are the ultimate expression of the Greek Enlightenment, the belief that the human mind, through reason and mathematics, could grasp the very workings of the heavens. The evidence has been gathered, the theories presented. Now the jury must deliberate. And in the academic courtroom where your identity is debated, all fingers seem to point to one place, a sun-drenched island in the Aegean that, for a brief, brilliant period, was the scientific capital of the world. Rhodes. While we can never be 100% certain without a maker's mark that says Made in Rhodes, the circumstantial case is overwhelmingly strong. Let's re-examine the key pieces of evidence through this Rhodes filter. First, and most importantly, is the science embedded in your gears. The advanced astronomical theories you model, particularly the sophisticated correction for the moon's irregular orbit, are the signature work of Hipparchus. He was the man who transformed Greek astronomy from a descriptive science into a predictive geometric one. And where did he do the bulk of his revolutionary work? On the island of Rhodes in his observatory, between roughly 140 and 120 BCE. The timing is a perfect match for your estimated date of manufacture. It's almost impossible to imagine you could have been built somewhere else, by someone who was not deeply familiar with the very latest, cutting-edge research coming out of the Rhodian School of Astronomy. Second, there's the testimony of Cicero. Remember our Roman friend who saw all the cool gadgets? He explicitly links a planetary machine to Poseidon, who ran a major philosophical school on Rhodes a generation after Hipparchus. While Poseidon was more of a polymath and philosopher than a specialist astronomer like Hipparchus, he was fascinated by the cosmos and would have been exactly the kind of intellectual figure to own, use, or commission such a device for his teaching. The philosophical demonstrator theory of your purpose fits perfectly with the intellectual environment of Poseidon's school. Cicero's account provides a direct, historical link between a machine just like you and the island of Rhodes. Third, there is the evidence from your own inscriptions. A detailed linguistic analysis of the Greek cluttering on your dials and manual has been conducted by epigraphers. While Koine Greek was a common language, there were subtle regional variations in letter forms and vocabulary. The experts have concluded that the style of the script is consistent with that used in Rhodes during the period in question. It's not a smoking gun, but it's another important corroborating detail. It's like a faint accent in your written voice that betrays your origin. Finally, there's the logic of geography and trade. Rhodes was a major maritime hub, a wealthy independent power that controlled shipping lanes and had trade links across the entire Mediterranean. It had a long-established and highly respected tradition of bronze working and fine mechanics, famous for building everything from ships to giant statues, the Colossus of Rhodes being the most famous example. A Rhodian workshop would have had the necessary materials, the skilled artisans, and access to a global market of wealthy buyers in places like Rome. The ill-fated ship that carried you was on a common trade route that would have passed by Rhodes. It's entirely plausible that the ship either started its journey there or made a stop to pick up valuable cargo, including a very special, very expensive scientific instrument. All these threads, the science, the historical accounts, the linguistics, and the economics weave together to create a powerful tapestry. The debate today is less about if you came from Rhodes, and more about the specifics of how. Was it a direct product of Hipparchus' circle, a machine built to test his theories? Was it commissioned a generation later by Poseidon for his school? Or was it the product of an unknown, independent workshop on the island that catered to the luxury tech market? Historians argue over these finer points, each trying to build a more precise narrative. But the general consensus is clear. You are a child of Rhodes, the brilliant offspring of a unique moment in history when scientific theory, mechanical genius, and philosophical ambition all converged on one small, remarkable island. You are the finest surviving relic of a lost Rhodia and technological golden age. For so long we have been focused on you, the star of the show, the bronze box of cosmic genius. But you did not make your final journey alone. You were a passenger, just one piece of a much larger, wealthier, and more tragic story. To truly understand you, we have to look around at the other ghosts who settled with you on the seabed, the other treasures that the Antikythera wreck held. This shipwreck is not just your story, it's a perfectly preserved snapshot of high-stakes luxury trade at a pivotal moment in history. Let's sift through the debris field again, this time ignoring the corroded lump of gears and looking at the rest of the manifest. First and most famously, there is the art, the magnificent life-sized bronze statues, like the youth of Antikythera and the stern philosopher's head. These were not mass-produced garden ornaments. These were A-list masterpieces, the kind of art that would have been the centerpiece of a public square or a billionaire's private gallery. There were also dozens of marble sculptures, now fragmented, their ghostly white limbs scattered across the sand. This was a shipment of staggering artistic and monetary value, clear evidence that the cargo was destined for the booming art market of late Republican Rome. A wealthy general or politician, flush with cash from foreign conquests, was building a new villa and needed to fill it with the cultural cachet that only Greek art could provide. Then there is the more mundane, but equally informative cargo. Archaeologists have recovered a huge collection of ceramics. There are stacks of rhodia and amphorae, the distinctive clay jars used for transporting the region's famous wine. This is one of the strongest pieces of evidence linking the voyage to your birthplace. But there are also jars and bowls from other parts of the Greek world, like Ephesus and Pergamon. What did they hold? Wine, olive oil, perhaps other delicacies. You were traveling with the finest food and drink of the era. And then, there's the glassware. Exquisitely delicate, beautifully colored glass bowls and vases, so thin and fine it's a miracle any survived the reckon 2,000 years on the seafloor. These were the height of luxury, imported from workshops in Syria or Egypt. We also have pieces of furniture. Archaeologists have identified ornate bronze components from at least one, and possibly several, Clinae, the elegant chaise lounges on which wealthy Greeks and Romans would recline during their symposia or drinking parties. You can picture the intended scene, a Roman noble reclining on his bronze-fitted couch, sipping fine rhodia and wine from a Syrian glass bowl, all while admiring his new Greek statue. For archaeologists, perhaps the most important finds are the smallest, the coins. Several silver and bronze coins were recovered from the wreck, lodged in the sediment. Coins are a fantastic dating tool because they often bear the image of a specific ruler or have a known circulation period. The Antikythera coins, primarily from Pergamon and Ephesus, have allowed historians to date the shipwreck with remarkable precision to the decade between 70 and 60 BC. They are the anchor that moors this entire event in a specific, verifiable moment in time. This rich and varied cargo is at the heart of a major academic debate. What does it represent? Was this a single, unified shipment, all loaded at one major port like Pergamon or Rhodes, representing a curated collection sold by one art dealer to one wealthy Roman buyer? This is the single shipment theory. Or was the ship more like a tramp steamer, a cargo vessel that hopped from port to port, picking up different goods along the way? Maybe it loaded the statues in Pergamon, stopped in Ephesus for some pottery, then swung by Rhodes to pick up wine and a very special, cutting-edge piece of technology. This is the multi-port theory. The mix of artifacts from different regions keeps this debate alive, with each new find adding evidence to one side or the other. And then there's the most poignant and human find of all. Amidst the bronze, marble, and clay, archaeologists have found bones, the remains of the crew and, possibly, passengers who went down with the ship. For decades, only a few fragments were known, but in a recent excavation, divers recovered a remarkably complete human skeleton, nicknamed Pamphilos, buried under nearly a meter of sand and ceramic shards. For the first time, we have a face, a human story to attach to the tragedy. Scientists have even been able to extract DNA from the skull, opening up the incredible possibility of learning about this individual's genetic ancestry. This discovery is a stark reminder that this wasn't just a lost collection of objects. It was a human catastrophe. Pamphilus, the Roman art dealer, the ship's captain, they had no idea they were traveling with the most sophisticated piece of technology on the planet. To them, you were just another valuable curiosity, stowed in the dark hold, part of a rich cargo that would tragically never reach its destination. You've come a long way. From a cold, dark seabed to the glowing screens of 21st century labs. From a forgotten, corroded lump to the star of academic conferences and museum exhibits. You are, without a doubt, the single most important artifact ever recovered from the ancient world for understanding the history of science and technology. You have rewritten the books. You have humbled our modern arrogance. But after all the analysis, all the debates, all the reconstructions, what is your ultimate legacy? What do you leave us with? As you sit silently in your climate-controlled case at the National Archaeological Museum of Athens, you leave us with a profound sense of wonder, tinged with a deep sense of loss. You are a testament to a level of human ingenuity that we thought belonged only to our own age. You show us that the capacity for brilliant abstract, mechanical thought is not a modern invention. The desire to understand the cosmos and our place within it, and to model that understanding in a beautiful, intricate machine, is a timeless human endeavor. Your creator, that anonymous genius from the island of Rhodes, was a mind every bit as brilliant as the great scientific figures of the Renaissance or the modern era. You are his monument. But you are also a monument to the fragility of knowledge. You are a ghost from a lost world, and you haunt us with the question of what else has been lost. If a device this complex could vanish from the historical record so completely that its rediscovery was met with disbelief, what other wonders of the ancient world have disappeared without a trace? Were there other machines, perhaps for navigation, for construction, for medicine, that were equally ingenious but were all lost to the melting pots? You represent an entire library of lost knowledge. We are lucky to have found this one surviving page. The historian's great frustration is that we will never know the full scope of what was forgotten. You are both a window into all. You give us a stunning glimpse into a lost golden age of technology, but you also stand as a barrier, reminding us of the vast, dark continent of history that is forever beyond our reach. You have also become a cultural icon. You've inspired artists, filmmakers, and storytellers. You are the ultimate out-of-place artifact, the perfect fuel for stories about lost civilizations and ancient astronauts. While these fantastical theories can be entertaining, your true story is, I think, far more powerful. It doesn't require aliens or magic. It only requires an appreciation for the extraordinary capabilities of the human mind, and a sober understanding of the destructive power of time. And so use it, a humble piece of bronze, no bigger than a dictionary. You are fragmented, corroded, and incomplete. Your pointers are gone, your case is splintered, and many of your gears are frozen in a final, silent embrace. Yet, you are more eloquent than the grandest statues that were found alongside you. They speak of the beauty of the human form. You speak of the beauty of the human mind. You are a quiet, mechanical whisper across 2,000 years, a message in a bottle from a lost civilization, telling us that they, too, looked up at the stars and saw not just chaos, but a magnificent, silent, beautiful clockwork. And for a brief, shining moment, they figured out how to build the key. And so the story of the small bronze box comes to a close. The clicking of its gears fades away, replaced by the soft, steady rhythm of your own breathing. The image of those intricate wheels, turning in the deep, begins to soften at the edges, blurring into the gentle darkness behind your eyes. The questions and debates of the archaeologists and historians become a low, distant murmur, like voices from a room far, far away. There is nothing left to solve tonight, nothing to decipher. The mystery has been put back on its shelf, to rest in the quiet of the museum. You can feel the weight of those 2,000 years not as a burden, but as a deep, profound calm. Imagine the ship, no longer sinking in a storm, but gliding silently now on a sea of stars. It sails on a calm, endless ocean of night, its cargo of wonders finally at peace. The bronze philosopher is sleeping. The marble youths are dreaming. And the little machine, the cosmic clock, is finally still. Its job is done. The sun and the moon and the planets are all in their proper place, held in the gentle gravity of your deepening slumber. Let the current of that deep, quiet ocean carry you now. There are no more sharp edges of fact, only the smooth, rounded stones of a story that has been told. Let it all drift away into the quiet, comfortable space that waits for you now, the soft and welcoming landscape of your own peaceful dreams.